Good afternoon. Thank you, David, for the introduction. My name is Liz Falcon. I'm the Principal Transportation Analyst and Statewide Response Coordinator for NJDOT's Office of Emergency Management, Security, and Response. Today, I'm joined by Sal Cowan, NJDOT's Senior Director of Mobility, and we're pleased to be able to speak with you about how NJDOT has applied many of the aspects of the FHWA Planned Special Events Checklist, and specifically the checklist's second component, the feasibility study, into our New York, New Jersey planning efforts for FIFA World Cup 2026. Let me begin by highlighting what the PSE checklist is. The checklist is a downloadable Word document that you can edit for your event, adding notes as you go along. It provides common sequential steps for readying for, managing, and post-event analysis for small or large planned events. The checklist operationalizes the PSE handbook. There are 6 checklist components illustrated here. The level of effort expended within each component really depends on the size of your event and the level of institutional and documented historical knowledge you have regarding your event. Today's New Jersey presentation will focus more on the feasibility study component of the PSE checklist through the lens of the 2026 FIFA World Cup planning. Each checklist component has a list of steps and assessments. The feasibility study component has 5 steps and includes 13 assessments. The 5 steps for the feasibility study component included, it's the second row. You'll see travel forecast, market area analysis, parking demand analysis, traffic demand analysis, and roadway capacity analysis. For your planned event, you may need some or all of these steps and assessments. Given that the checklist is nearly 20 years old, the FHWA initiated a review and a refresh of the document, which has been socialized with the PSE Technical Working Group. Impressively, the checklist components, steps, and assessments remain as true today as when it was first developed. There are areas where specific assessments will be refreshed. The NJDOT is a member of the FHWA PSE Technical Working Group, and as a member of this working group, we'll share 2 small refreshes planned for the feasibility study component. These refreshes relate to the event traffic generation and to the review of on-site parking supply assessments. These are circled in yellow. For the event generation assessment, the FHWA PSE team intends to add a new tip, which is to consider ancillary neighborhood trip generators for non-ticketed patrons. These are the folks that may have a ticket, may not have a ticket, but intend to come to the venue, perhaps to tailgate or just to enjoy the environment. For the review of on-site parking supply assessment checklist element, the FHWA PSE team intends to add TNCs within the tips and examples column. These are your Uber and Lyft demands, which are becoming increasingly critical when considering on-site parking supply. As David noted, the December 2024 PSE Spotlight webinar highlighted refreshes to the first checklist component, initial planning activities. In future webinars, additional planned refreshes will be shared. The FHWA requests and welcomes any region to share their own checklists or playbooks for their planned special events. These documents will be used to enhance the tips and examples as illustrated earlier. And again, in the chat pod is the link to download and personalize the checklist for your planned special events. Having highlighted the feasibility study component checklist, let me set the stage for our FIFA planning. Our Assistant Commissioner of Operations, Chris Weintel, is the department's lead for FIFA-related activities. What you see here is the department's vision for the 2026 transportation experience. We're focused on 3 levels of readiness: administration readiness, where our people are trained and ready to support all activities; infrastructure readiness, where our road network is safely and efficiently run And we've got all people and contracts in place to support mobility and any emergencies that come up. And lastly, coordination readiness. NJDOT falls under the direction of the New Jersey State Police during the event, and we're part of their planning activities as well as their operational tactics. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. This is the match schedule for the 2026 FIFA World Cup with New York, New Jersey match schedule along the bottom row. But it's important to note, New Jersey not only has to plan for 8 matches at MetLife Stadium, including the final match, but also support mobility for 6 matches that are taking place in Philadelphia. And just to make things a little more interesting, there are 3 days where there are matches on the same day in both New Jersey and Philadelphia. Circled here are Monday, June 22nd, Thursday, June 25th, and Saturday, June 27th. But that's not the only thing going on in 2026. Sail 250, a global gathering of tall ships and military ships, will come into New York Harbor 4th of July weekend to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States. In addition to that, we expect special events in all of New Jersey's 21 counties to celebrate the country's semi-quincentennial or 250th birthday. New Jersey is home to over 1,700 historic sites, 58 of them National Historic Landmarks, including the Princeton Monmouth battlefields from the Revolutionary War, Nassau Hall in Princeton, which was the home of American government in 1783, the old barracks, where George Washington captured Hessian troops after crossing the Delaware in 1776, and many more. The battleship, New Jersey, recently got a $10 million facelift. It rests on Delaware River across the city of Philadelphia, where the MLB All-Star Game will be hosted. Put all of these activities together, then add FIFA Fan Festival being held at Liberty State Park, state police escorts to and from airports and practice fields and team hotels. And let's not forget the regular Jersey Shore summer tourism industry that drew 120 million visitors to New Jersey in 2023, generating $78.3 billion in economic impact. The region is going to be alive with activities, and New Jersey is going to be the place to be that summer. Now I'd like to turn things over to NJDOT Senior Director of Mobility, Sal Cowan, who'll discuss our efforts using the feasibility checklist. Sal?
Thanks, Liz. I'm going to give you credit for semi-quincentennial. I had trouble with that the first couple of times as well, but great job. What I'd like to do is walk everyone through what New Jersey DOT's efforts have been for the 2026 FIFA World Cup and how it relates to the planned special events feasibility study checklist. A quick note, you're not going to see any slides that shows New Jersey DOT checking off boxes. That's not how we've worked on it. Our TSMO team has been managing special events for a few decades now, and I'm very happy to say that these things sort of kind of happen. They're things that we're very used to. But working with the checklist, especially the feasibility one, it's great to use this to validate our activities. And as Liz noted, the feasibility study checklist is meant to collect information to gauge the effect an event will have on your network and in the region. By walking through the items on here, you're essentially checking, is this event feasible without any impact? So the first piece we're going to discuss would be the forecast, the various aspects of travel for the event. So what kind of mode split would be taking place? Is that the information that you have? Do you know that? For example, for MetLife Stadium, they use historical events to estimate the mode. I'll give you an example. For Taylor Swift, we had a significant number of attendees who came by car and by rideshare, the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world. Compare that to the audience for Copa, we had a larger percentage of attendees by transit. Next, we look at event traffic generation. You should always know what your stadium capacity is. For MetLife Stadium, without any seating alteration, like what's going to take place for FIFA World Cup to accommodate the soccer pitch, attendance is 82,500. That said, Ed Sheeran showed up, performed in the round, so that there's no stage prohibiting the seats on a certain section, and they opened up the floor so people were able to fit an additional 7,000 people. What would that do to your parking, your transit, your rideshare? These are the things that you think about. Lastly, under travel forecast, we look at arrival rate. What happens during a football game? Tailgating. For a 1 o'clock football game on a Sunday, the parking lots here at MetLife open at 8 a.m. The gates into the stadium open at 11. So that's a timeline for parking lot grilling, touch football games, pre-event activities for fans. One thing I could recommend is build the relationship with your stadium event coordinator. They will most likely know the method people be coming, how many tickets they're selling in advance, as well as parking and entry info. All of these details are going to give you a much better understanding of being able to forecast the demand on your network. The next item in the planned special events checklist is the market area analysis. It's not something that we've done necessarily in New Jersey DOT in a structured way, but more along the line of, we know our roads mentality, but we have some supporting documentation with it. For many of the events at MetLife Stadium, we don't have a lot of background information in terms of performing a market analysis. The Giant Stadium was here before MetLife Stadium, so we already know there's a particular type of crowd for football games. That said, for a new venue, when you perform at one, you're looking at directional distribution of trips. Essentially, which roads should people use to get to specific parking, capacity, access points, and things like that. The way we see it, this is your understanding your audience going to the event, but you can't forget the market in which the event is taking place. So for regular event participants, such as football fans, for either the Jets or the Giants, MetLife Stadium has created these team-specific parking maps to help guide people to get to their area. So you have two New York teams sharing the same stadium. Where do the fans come from? So this is one of the interesting things that we've learned is you get an idea of where the team fans come from. North Jersey, particularly Giants. You got a lot of fans in upstate New York, lower Hudson Valley, and you got a lot of them coming from Long Island. I have friends that live in Long Island. They drive all the way from Long Beach and Nassau County all the way to Jets games. It's interesting. But then again, after this year, you can imagine anybody in the southern part of that piece with New Jersey, they're all Eagles fans. So, I'm an Eagles fan now myself too. I tag on to the winning team. Next, we're going to walk through parking demand analysis. Now, this is a huge topic of conversation, especially for FIFA World Cup in 2026. So one of the things that the folks who are involved with World Cup activities in FIFA from the start is that for the World Cup in 2026, there will be a reduction in on-site parking. So generally there's 27,500 parking spots total at the property, the map that you see there. Considering there are going to be security perimeters implemented for both vehicles and pedestrians, as well as the configuration being created for the final match, we are going to see a dramatic reduction in on-site parking. And so we have to start talking about mode choice. You can't reduce parking and then expect people to just try and drive up. So we have to really have the conversation about mode choice. Why is it important? So I'll give you an example. Jimmy's got 2 tickets, right? He's taking his son to the game. Jimmy lives all the way out in Long Island. Is he going to drive? Probably not. He might not have a parking spot to just show up to, especially the cost due to the reduced supply. So what the host committee and the teams working here in the New York, New Jersey area are talking about is we want to make sure that Jimmy and I'll call his son Little Jimmy, Jimmy and Little Jimmy take the Long Island Railroad to the New York City subway, and then they hop a bus to the stadium in New Jersey. And here's the important part. They take the same modes home. Having a mode change between ingress and egress is difficult because you don't know what to expect on your network. If they switch between arrival and departure, you can have an overflow for rideshare when planned bus service could have available seating. In addition to the mass transit opportunities, our host city is looking at park and ride locations for pickup and drop off, not so much in terms of additional parking for spectators. Next, we'll talk about traffic demand analysis. So traffic demand analysis essentially is some of the parts that we've all talked about: travel forecast, knowing your mode split, arrival rate, event traffic generation, market area analysis, where your attendees are coming from, and parking. It's all self-explanatory. The checklist really does give you the information in very plain language. And all of this feeds into the traffic demand analysis. When you start talking about directional distribution, it's talking about, what freeways or arterials are going to be affected by an event, right down to the ramps, the intersections, your turning movements. For those of you that have worked near stadiums, you have an understanding, if these people come out onto this roadway at this point, they're going to interfere with people who are coming straight through. And so you've got a heavy merge point. Or in certain circumstances, you might have a weave, people trying to get across to certain exits. So creating the assignment event-generated traffic refers to the process of determining which roads and routes the attendees are likely to use. For the event-directed approach, that's simple. You can help that along with signage. Anybody that's involved in TSMO, if you've ever lent an agency, a partner, an event, a board, stuff like event traffic, use the left lane, you're mapping out your anticipated traffic flow. You're helping with the assignment of that traffic. So for FIFA 26, we know the bus routes will be primarily coming from New York City and a large amount of traffic from the New Jersey Turnpike. Our roads connect from both, so we know the roads and the ramps. Once they're on property, though, the stadium's responsible for the flow around the stadium. But again, they've got to finalize their property map as well as the vehicle and the pedestrian screening areas. So some internal roads, that picture I showed you before of MetLife Stadium with all the parking, some of those roadways might not be accessible because they've got to create pedestrian and security barriers for safety reasons. Anybody who's been involved with FIFA 2026, you know that the safety and security issue is the highest priority. These are worldwide events. But, if you look at the screenshot that I have here, our analysis in New Jersey focuses primarily on the speed data we get from the University of Maryland and the RIDIS analysis platform. So what you see on the map, 7 o'clock, October 15th, is 1 hour before the 8 o'clock Monday Night Football game, Jets-Bills. Pretty decent rivalry, right? Jets-Bills. But notice all the traffic, that red box, is southbound heading towards the stadium. So this is what we now know. We should be there before 7 o'clock. Now, this is just a snapshot. It was delayed before this. But when you have these analytical tools, you can see what happens before the event. This way you can determine your timeline. This is great for a football game when all the internal roads are open. There's not a significant security presence. Once you start adding all those additional items on top of your stadium facility, your stadium road network, we could be looking at a different picture. So you could be looking at something completely different. When you're talking about the assignment of event-generated traffic, it's knowing the area. Where are your people coming from? But we also look to make an impact on that type of event-generated traffic and assigning it and turning around and saying, look, you can help. What you see on the screen, these are signs that we had deployed during when the Super Bowl was here in New Jersey a number of years ago, color-coded portable VMS, and explaining that and getting that to your constituents, showing them, look, if they may have a red ticket, stadium zone is red, the sign is red, go left. The blue stadium zone, go left. Arena zone, go right. You're mapping out your anticipated traffic flow. Once we get a more set in stone parking map from the stadium, and let's face it, specific routes for buses, we'll be using our signage this way, whether it's overhead signs, portable signs, and the like. Finally, let's talk about roadway capacity analysis. So here at New Jersey DOT, we are the approvers of all non-emergency lane closures for construction, whether it's maintenance, utilities, capital programs, whatnot. What we do is our people do lane closure analysis based on counts. So we use 1,400 vehicles per lane per hour as the maximum number of vehicles you could allow before you could close the lane. So anything above 1,400 hours, we don't allow them to close the lane during that certain time frame. So example, you have a 2-lane road that can carry 2,800 vehicles per hour with no delay. Event traffic has so many different variables, especially when you've got such a compressed ingress and such a rapid egress, right? Football games, not as compressed of an ingress. Maybe you've got a lot of people tailgating, and then that last hour before the game, you get the crush. There are going to be activities on the properties for FIFA prior to the game. So there are going to be people who want to get there earlier, get their seats, take their pictures. So the roadway capacity for sections of the stadium, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, right now, they're not going to be sufficient for that last hour of ingress, like I showed you with the Jets-Bills game. And then when you enter the highway, you have nearby decision points that will also be heavier on egress. So when you're getting in that last hour, it's going to be busy. And then when you're done and you're trying to leave, it's going to be just as busy. You've all sat in traffic if you're leaving an event. Think about it, you're leaving a movie theater. You all get out at the same time. It's the same thing. What I'll do now is I'll turn the mic back over to Liz to close things up. Liz?
Thanks, Sal. As we wrap up our presentation, I just wanted to emphasize the value of communications during major events. Communication is absolutely critical. In the summer of 2023, NJDOT watched what happened across the country with crowds attending the Eras Tour. We didn't want to have our network significantly impacted and had to get the word out about the concerts combined with holiday traffic and the fact that people shouldn't try to go to the stadium without tickets. The result was significant. An analysis was performed by the data company Streetlight, and it showed New Jersey was able to reduce background traffic and greatly improve mobility around the stadium. Where other Eras concert stadiums saw nearly double the vehicles of delay on their roadways, our communication efforts helped to reduce delays around the stadium, leading to a safer and more efficient road network for one of the hottest concerts in the country. And we got high marks in the media to boot. I'd like to thank everyone and for being here today, and I'll turn it back to FHWA partners. Back to you, David.
I think at this time, yeah, thanks, Tom. At this time, we actually do have a couple questions in the Q&A pod. So I'll invite Sal and Liz to pop back on camera if you would. The first question is from an anonymous attendee, but it pertains to the World Cup. So with a significant influx of international fans expected for the FIFA World Cup, how is New Jersey DOT planning to manage crowd control in terms of demand management, wayfinding, and parking at both the stadium and the Fan Fest locations? Any response to that, Sal or Liz?
Sure. So one of the things that we have to really consider is the international fan base. One of the things in working with our partners at New Jersey Transit, they had the Copa match last year, and they themselves recognize that an increased multilingual wayfinding approach would be incredibly helpful. We've been very arm in arm with our host city leadership. We have both the New Jersey side and the New York City side. And we recognize that people are going to be coming like Jimmy and Little Jimmy. They're going to be coming from Long Island. They're going to be coming through New York City. They're going to be coming from upstate and so on and so forth. And they actually need to have a multilingual effort. Parking is going to be difficult. Let's not sugarcoat it. With the security and the pedestrian perimeters at MetLife Stadium, if you think about it, every host city across the country is going to have some kind of a footprint for security and vehicles and pedestrian security. As the events slowly start to shrink down, the international media is going to be coming to MetLife Stadium. The focus on the World Cup, the largest sporting event ever to be held, the largest sporting event to ever be witnessed, televised, performed, is going to be at MetLife Stadium. There is not going to really be every day, hey, let's get in the car and go see if we can get to the game. It's just not going to happen. Demand management, we want people to be aware and not be scared. The World Cup coming to New Jersey and the associated festivals, the fan events, the events that they're planning surrounding all these types of activities, including the fan festival at Liberty State Park. As Liz mentioned, it's an incredibly exciting time to be here in New Jersey with our 250th anniversary, just across the river in Philadelphia with the MLB All-Star Game, with the city of Philadelphia being, you know, where did they all sit there and work through, you know, the Declaration of Independence? I mean, you're talking about, you know, the birth of our nation. There is so much going on that it's going to be tricky. No one's saying it's not. But a lot of the information has to be with communication. You know, as Natalie mentioned, and you folks at the district mentioned, you have to be able to communicate to your audience. I like the static signs you guys put up. We've been talking about what is the best way to approach that from a fan point of view. Do we want the FIFA Cup logo with an arrow inside the transit stations? You know, there are a lot of various scenarios we've talked about, and catering to our international visitors is certainly one of them.
Good answer, Sal. Thank you for your insights on that. Couple more questions. I think the next two are for DDOT. So Natalie and Tom, do you feel the district's laws and regulations requiring TNCs like Uber and Lyft to share data with you were critical for your planned special event success? And if so, how was that helpful?
Absolutely. The having good contacts with the TNCs really makes a difference in our entire planning effort. The ridership data and everything else, we do this. I know you mentioned it before. We have so many special events in DC that this is something that we have to do on a regular basis. We've had our All-Star game. I know our New Jersey folks get theirs this year. We have major demonstrations on a regular basis. Major events on the National Mall. Our 4th of July is huge as well, and we establish roughly the same type of security perimeter as the inauguration for that. So yes, working with the TSCs and establishing the different locations on a regular basis really works to our advantage.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Russell Holt, for your question there. One more question that we have is from JD Schneeberger. Can DDOT speak to the coordination with Virginia and Maryland DOTs, and how is that coordination from an ITS and operations perspective leading up to the inauguration?
It's mostly about traffic management, dealing with the bus traffic and all the different road closures. We close a few of the bridges going across from DC to Virginia. We shut down the HOV lanes on the main bridge between DC and Virginia for parade escorts and for dignitary escorts and things like that. We close the tunnels that travel under the National Mall and under the Capitol itself. And needless to say, those are huge traffic routes. So coordination with Maryland and Virginia in terms of rerouting vehicles around the National Capital Beltway and I-95 and several other major routes is pretty important. Natalie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add that you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that you mentioned, Tom, in both responses is it is so important to have these established relationships. And so we do this sort of interface and coordination on a daily basis, even outside of just a general special event. And so that really sort of supports us when we're looking to now do an event such as an inauguration or even something on a smaller scale. It really is about interoperability. And while our command centers are not necessarily interoperable, the district, Maryland, Virginia, we do share some commonalities. We both are part of what we call the RITIS process. So it gives us real-time travel information that we can share. And so everyone's really much on the same page. And then we also have our cameras, which I want to say we leverage very much throughout the district, not just DDOT, but also our law enforcement, but specifically the 3 DOTs. And that is important because now we have sort of a visual, if you will, a commonality in terms of visuals, particularly when it comes to our infrastructure, our bridges, our roads. Not all cameras in the district can see what's in Maryland and vice versa, but there is some critical infrastructure where all of these DOTs are able to see in real time what is taking place. And so I think just that coordination outside of an event really just plays to our benefit when we are sort of working collectively with these various events. And someone put in there, yes, the MATOC coordination as well. Again, all of these DLTs are part of that MATOC conversation. We have a monthly call with the Council of Governments where all of these representatives and MATOC is there. So again, it's really the conversations that are happening outside of the special event that again becomes the benefit for us when we're planning these events and executing them.
Thank you both. One other thing that Tom mentioned during his presentation that I think is absolutely critical and something that I was going to ask about, but you covered very well, was succession planning. And how do you keep, the inauguration's on a 4-year cycle. You mentioned that DDOT in particular has had very high turnover the last 6, 7, 8 years. And you talked about kind of pulling in other people into meetings, but also your records management with the SharePoint site that you use. Are there any other aspects, and this is for Sal and Liz as well, are there any other aspects that practitioners need to be aware of to share this knowledge for the next group that's coming up for, 2 inaugurations from now, or when the World Cup comes back in 24 years or 30 years? What are you all doing to make sure that that information is archived, but also training the next people that are coming up through your organizations, in particular as they pertain to PSEs? So how do you make sure that the next generation of folks that are coming into your positions are ready and able to learn from all the pains and successes that you've all had?
Yeah, again, like I discussed, the SharePoint site that we have, we've got all of the documents that we could find in the history of DDOT dumped into that site at this point. And, as long as SharePoint doesn't go away and we still have them downloaded to thumb drives and things like that, just so that, hopefully there'll be some way of recovering all of these documents left behind. You said it again, making sure that you bring somebody with you to these meetings, train that next generation, get them involved in these different things. We have so many special events that the more people that can handle these things and the leaders that let people take ownership of roles and allow them to run with these things and make some mistakes, and then you can work with them to correct mistakes. It's all a part of building future leaders and moving into the future that way.
And I would like to sort of add just a point to that. Tom's absolutely right. I think the other thing for us that we recognize is when Tom talks about that lengthy list of tasks, and he's being very modest because those were just the DDOT tasks. There were tasks outside of that we were a support to. So that list was infinite. But I do think I want to just share with this group that when we're talking about as well with this special event and our experience, there are those tasks that fall neatly into sort of the alignment of our department. So every day we do traffic management. Every day we have signal people who are out there. So that's not a new sort of effort. What really becomes that effort, and which is why it is so important to document this and to train someone, is because there are those sort of non-traditional tasks that we had to lead. The chart of us that Tom talked about, the ambassador program, which is like a whole cadre of customer service people. These are not tasks or operations that we do on a daily basis. And so it's important to understand that there's not a built-in part of the agency that we go to say, okay, this is the group that automatically does this. This really gets formed by various people throughout the department. And so I think as we look at, 29? It's important to recognize that those non-traditional tasks will require people who've had some experience, but more than likely have not had the experience because it's not traditionally something that's in our wheelhouse.
Great answer. Thank you. Sal, Liz, did you want to speak to the succession planning or record management or any other aspect that I brought up?
Well, Liz is gonna absolutely be reminded of this. I have a staying here. There are a couple of three rules that I have with my staff. You know, good news first, good news fast, bad news faster. That's always a good one. But there's one that I always really try and reinforce with my people is you never know when you're gonna get hit by a bus. You could
Same thing.
have
Okay.
best laid plans and be walking to the meeting with your plans and get hit by the bus. And so when they're saying, where's the plan? Well, he got hit by the bus. That could be a number of different references. Someone could get married, win the lottery, decide to retire, move to another country, or something even more unfortunate. We always try to tell our staff, never go to a meeting alone. This way, you are not the only one that heard the story. And if something happens to you, you don't know what the story is. Liz is nodding her head like, yeah, I heard this bus reference thousands.
I have a backdrop for my meetings with the Cowan Express behind me.
I said
mean-
that bus comment at most meetings myself. Same
But
thing.
it's
Yeah.
important. We were just talking about this the other meeting I was in before. Knowledge management, being able to translate and manage information down. The website you guys showed up, that ArcGIS website, is fantastic. In 5 to 6 years, what's the new version of that going to be? Is ArcGIS the platform you're going to use? We were handed a brand new software package right before the Super Bowl, like 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. We all went like this. No, not 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. You're not giving us something new like that. But our plans are very ICS focused. Liz is the statewide incident management coordinator. We develop plans for everything from the such and such festival to MetLife. We'll have an ICS based plan as we roll up into the state police.
Thank you. Thank you all for a great answer. We got one more question that came in, so let's tackle this for the last couple minutes that we have. How do you all manage public outreach and messaging during planned special event times when so many roads, tunnels, and bridges are closed, but many people in the public can't work from home, they're shift workers, or they need to be somewhere for an appointment? It's a concern for MassDOT, has given that 6 of the 7 World Cup matches are on weekdays with MassDOT. So how do you manage your public outreach and messaging with your PIO offices?
Well, the first thing I would say is when it comes to communication, it's about early communication and often communication. And again, the good news is that the communication piece is not something that's just happens during an inauguration or during a special event. It really is predicated on the building of relationships, whether it's with your business community, your church community, the federal government here. So it's really establishing, in my opinion, that laying down that sort of coordination connection outside of these events. And so when there are events that are in place that will have some adverse impact on, whether, as you said, David, on traffic, the infrastructure, there is sort of an expectation on both sides, on the government side, but also on the community side, to be able to have those conversations upfront and personal. I will share with you, we have a great PIO team, as I'm sure in New Jersey as well. And so it is always about making sure that we understand who the stakeholder is that we need to communicate with and how to communicate with that stakeholder, because every stakeholder does not receive the same message the same way, nor do they take that message in the same way. So my advice is always early and often, and then being able to pivot, because sometimes it's real-time communication, and that's when we have to leverage every tool we have in the toolbox to be able to push that communication out in real time.
Anyone else want to tackle that, or did Natalie take care of that answer? It was an amazing answer. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank Tom, Natalie, Sal, and Liz for your time. I know you're all very busy, and just taking an hour and a half out of your day. I know New Jersey DOT is dealing with a sinkhole issue right now. So just taking 90 minutes of your day to share your expertise and insights into planned special events. We thank you very much for doing that. I also want to thank NOCO for hosting us. Always a pleasure dealing with Adam and Nick at NOCO. Thanks again for them to host us. And everybody else in the audience, thank you for the questions that you sent in. It makes for a much better webinar when we have active participation from the audience. So thank you again. If you have any questions for me, my email address was posted in the chat. Always happy to connect with you or talk through planned special events. And if you have technical questions from the speakers, feel free to reach out to them as well. With that, and there's my email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. With that, I'm going to end the presentation and the webinar. I want to thank everybody that participated, and I hope you all stay safe and take care. Thanks.
Thank you.